But we're delighted to be back with another creative conversation. And a huge thank you to Education Scotland, who in partnership with Creative Scotland provide the funding for these events. Always really, really grateful for that. And we're really grateful today that we're back on Microsoft Teams, one of the wonderfully efficient technologies that we've all become used to and fallen in love with through the debacle of the last year and 8 months or whatever it's been. But can I ask you please, if you're not speaking or presenting, to make sure that you mute. Helena Good, who'll be featuring lately, has also entertained us earlier on with a conversation about her father, joining an international conversation simply to see how his wee lassie was doing, and all sorts of stuff kicked off. So mute on, let's avoid embarrassment at all costs. We're also really excited because this is our second conversation in association with COP26, and we're absolutely urgent about this. We're really urgent about this because, as David Attenborough is already saying, this could be the last chance for international governments to actually make progress before we pass all sorts of cliff-edge deadlines that we're facing. We've called the conversation Burning Down the House with a nod to Talking Heads. It's also a nod to Naomi Klein's book, On Fire, because that's literally, I think, what's happening to the planet. And we're really keen that we focus on that. There's a brilliant hashtag that underpins a lot of the work that Helena and her colleagues will be talking about, and it's hashtag Get On With It, which always reminds me of the Billy Connolly sketch that some of you may have seen with the Christians and the lions and the chant from the crowd being "Day something." And I think that's the chant that COP26 should be subjected to as well. We're recording the event, so if you want to participate in it and you want to actually ask a question when you get the chance to do that, please remember that it will be recorded. Otherwise, questions can go in the chat. We'll keep tabs on that and we'll bring them in later on. We've got a brilliant team with us today, which reflects, I think, the kind of collaboration that we need if we're going to make progress around the climate emergency. We're going to have Helena Good, who'll start us off. Helena's from Daydream Believers, and she's been actively involved in all sorts of activity, which she'll talk about later. She'll be followed, oddly enough, by Helena Good, but at that point, she'll be pretending to be somebody else. She'll be pretending to be Ruth Cochrane, who's apparently stuck in a biblical rainfall in an electric car in Glasgow, which pretty much sums up, I think, the spirit of COP26. We've got climate disaster, we've got electric cars, we've got efforts at conservation, all going on simultaneously, and we still can't get to it. So Helena will pretend to be Ruth, and you will all bear with her, because in the circumstances, it's the least you can do. She'll then be followed by Philipa Drummond from Drummond Community School. That's great combination of names there. Absolutely delighted that Philipa's with us. She's been a great supporter of Creative Conversations throughout the period that we've been running them, and I'm so pleased that she's here participating in one of them today. She's also a great practitioner, been a long-standing member of staff in Drummond, and I think somebody who really makes a difference. She's seconded 1 day a week now to work with Daydream Believers, and we're really looking forward to hearing what's been going on at Drummond. And then the last contribution to this swathe of contributions that we're going to get, supported perhaps by a flawless presentation that we'll share with you, or not, as the case might be. Things have been a bit glitchy during the warm-up for this. But we've got Christine Jones and Debbie Matthewson from South Primary School and Scottish Borders. And they've got some great stories to tell. I'm also on their behalf making a shout out to Ian Livingston, who's Chief Constable of Police Scotland, but was formerly a pupil of mine and the captain of my under-14 football team, because we're looking for him to authorise a Police Scotland escort to get them to COP in time to make their contribution there as well. So it's a brilliant and really exciting looking day that we've got for you. We had a wonderful first conversation around the climate emergency and creative conversations, and we think that today will be a big match for it. So without any further ravings, I'm going to pass over to Helena, now this time speaking for herself. Helena, it's over to you.
Okay, and thanks David. That just a lovely welcome. Yeah, he's referring to a conversation where my dad joined when we were presenting with Lego, and he had the news on in the background, and all my family, everybody on the shouting, "Mute, Dad, mute!" But yeah, these are often interesting and difficult conversations that happen, but we're hoping that our technical glitches are a thing of the past, and Lorna is going to share a presentation that I have that's going to talk to you a little bit about our story. Just as David said, this is the get on with it conversation. It's not a monologue, it's a conversation. And we would love you to use the chat to share anything that sparks for you in terms of that conversation. Anything that you're doing at the minute around the climate emergency, under that, get on with it. We're just doing this. This is what we're doing in our schools. This is what you're doing in your own lives. We would be really, really keen to see that. So I'm hoping that Lorna can share our presentation. As David said, a huge thanks to Philipa and Christine and Debbie, who have come in fairly last minute, really, in sharing their ideas and their story. And the story is a really, for me, a really exciting example of what happens when schools, colleges and universities come together under a simple challenge, and how we can all share our insights and find different ways that work for ourselves in terms of telling our story. So that's the hashtag, as you see there. You'll also see the Daydream Twitter handle. If there's anything that sparks from you in terms of the proposal and particularly around the creative thinking qualification, please feel free just to get in touch using that. So Lorna, how are you doing out there? Are you everything going to plan?
Hi Helena, that's it sharing for me now, and I believe Charlotte can see it, so maybe certain people are in, others not, but I think it should be appearing for people now, so I think you can go for it. Thanks.
That's brilliant. So we just want to so we're doing a little bit like the Chuckle Brothers here. Charlotte and Lorna are going to help share. So Lorna, just next slide. Hopefully. So it's that moment. Just talk amongst yourselves for a minute.
I think you tempted fate with the Chuckle Brothers reference.
Oh, to me, to you. I do hope you're warm out there, and just let's pause for a minute. The weather is pretty atrocious here. I'm in Humby in East Lothian, and it's pouring down. So I hope you've got something warm, a cuppa, whatever, to keep you company. Because this is a story that I think hopefully will warm your hearts. It's a story that talks to us, just as you see there, about action and the questions around action. And I don't know if you remember Mike O'Ryan, but at the beginning of the pandemic, this was one of the quotes that he talked about, and he talked to us, just as you read there, about, you know, our desire for things to be right and how we become paralyzed by the fear of failure. And that is one of the kind of the things that we're going to talk about today. How do we make that happen? How do we move forward when very often, you know, it's difficult at the minute just to even think about what we can make for tea? So next slide. So just as you see here, this is some of the assets that we've been using for Get On With It. And it talks about the kind of the blah, blah, blah. We know the conversation, we know what needs to happen, and we now need to put action and energy behind all of that. So in the next slide, I'll just pause and we'll just go next slide. Good, it's coming. I always feel reassured when you see the circle going round and round. That's reassuring. We're getting there, Lorna. Just keep taking big deep breaths.
I'm breathing.
You're doing well. You're doing well.
Yeah, I wish it would listen to the message on the slide, which is get on with it. It's not quite absorbed that. I think it's getting there.
It's getting there. It's getting there. So these are some of the assets that we will be using. They've been designed by Whitespace, and actually a lovely story. One of our students from Edinburgh College, who's now working there, Neve, has created the campaign, and it is a campaign that we are using within the venue that we're part of, and it's been campaigned as part of the social. Right. So here we are back at my wedding. This is my mum and dad at my wedding 27 years ago. And I love this photo because it's a photo caught just with one of those wee cameras. And it's my husband there, Johnny. And I'm not 100% sure exactly what was said at this point, and it could be that his hand over his mouth because they've revealed a story from my teenage years that wasn't really appropriate for a wedding at that point in time. But what I do remember is that they both spoke. And what they spoke about was the different stages of being married. And they talked about the 3 stages. They talked about the romance, they talked about the disillusionment, and they talked about the joy. And at that stage, when I was in the romance, the disillusionment and the joy didn't make any sense. But quite quickly, as many of you who are married perhaps can understand, romance can turn from, you know, oh my God, you're so funny, to that's really not funny, to I love that we can still laugh at that. And it is those 3 stages in the next slide that you'll see that have been really reminiscent of also in my career as a teacher. I think one of the things to say is, one of the things my parents failed to say is you can go through those 3 stages in a marriage in the space of a morning, you know, quite quickly. But what I hope and what we're sharing in this story is the journey from romance, disillusionment, and joy, that is part of our story and our relationship at the minute with the climate. And, you know, when you think about it in terms of being a younger person, you grow up and you look and you think, this is amazing, you know, look at this world, the puddles, you know, life is amazing, you're outdoors. And perhaps for many of us at this point in time, we're in the disillusionment stage. And what we hope, we really hope, and part of our conversation is moving to the joy. So when the next slide comes, you'll see the next part of that story. And what we are looking at is, how do we support the energy and the action to move through those different stages? My mum and dad would be delighted that they're on screen for so long. One of the things that they did do was they both actually walked me down the aisle too. So by the time my wedding procession got through, nobody was really interested in having a look at me. So while we're waiting on the slides to kind of come together, I'll just fill in a little bit on from the people you're going to hear from. We've invited Philipa along. If I hang on and wait, Lorna, I'll wait for you to come through.
Okay, it's on the next slide on my screen. It should be coming, and what I'm doing is I'm not going to make it full screen, and that might be gentler on the system.
Okay, let's do it.
Sure, I'm giving it a go.
Right, well, I can see now me and my class in school, and that's part of my story in terms of the romance, disillusionment, and joy. And I think teaching is very much part of that. I remember the romance of when I first started teaching, going, you get 12 weeks paid holiday a year? You know, how can that be happening? And then the disillusionment of, we only get 12 weeks holiday a year. Or as many of you might, it's going to take me 3 weeks to order some Post-it notes. But as you all know, what happens is that you come through the joy, and the joy is the students that you work with, the young people that are there. So in the next slide there, Lorna, what we're doing there is mapping out the story. And many of you may have already seen this, but it relates to the creative bravery, and in particular, where we go from A to B. So as we talk about this story, what I would really love you to think about at the minute is, where's your B? Where do you want to end up in terms of this story, this conversation? And where are you now on this slide? So in the next slide, what you'll see is we're focusing in here on the pit of the stomach. You see the circular squiggly line part there? We're looking at that because I would imagine for most of us, we're exhausted. A lot of our day we're spent in this. Poor Lorna, I would imagine you're pretty much in this pit of the stomach part where you're holding your breath and wondering what's going to happen. And you're thinking, how can I hold this together? And one of the things we're looking at is, how do we have the energy to move out of that at the minute? When, as I said, for many of us, just thinking about what we're going to wear, what am I going to make for tea, actually staying alive, how's that all going to work? So in the next slide, I'm just going to talk to you about one of the TED Talks that was part of the TEDx Glasgow event at COP26, just in the run up to it. And it was with a guy called Adam Dorr, and he talks about climate optimism. So what I would suggest, little bit like the story in my mom and dad told, romance and disillusionment, it needs an energy to move into joy. And for us to have climate optimism, we need to believe and be taking care of ourselves first. We need to look at our well-being. And if we do that, and if we actually openly acknowledge that we're tired, or that we need help, or that this is difficult, or we're stressed, and we find like-minded people, and we look at ways that we can take care of ourselves. One of the things that Adam's suggesting is that we are on the point of what he calls poised for disruption. And he just says that it's a really exciting, optimistic time, because there's so many innovations. And that if we clean up our act on transport, energy, and food, and all the innovations that are out there, that we can do this, that we can move into a stage where we will become a better species than we ever imagined. So in the next slide here, what you'll see, hopefully, is a quote from Greta. And she absolutely gets this. And it's this part about us as humans. So no longer going in the pit of our stomach and despairing at what our government ministers, policymakers are talking about or not doing, but actually thinking about how we can fix it. Because in the next slide, just as you'll see there, what Greta did, she took a piece of paper, she took a paintbrush, and she took some paint, and she sat outside a building. Creativity changes the world. It was a simple act, a simple demonstration, a simple get on with it conversation. What Greta demonstrated, which you'll see in the next slide, is what we have been calling and named Creative Bravery. And it was very much part of the Creative Bravery Festival that ran a number of weeks ago. And in that festival, we celebrated acts of bravery happening right across the world, in education, in policy, all of that. And it's a wonderful phrase. In the next slide, what I'm going to talk to you just very quickly is about my journey within Daydream Believers. So over 2 months ago, I made a creatively brave jump and moved from a secure pensionable occupation as a lecturer into working on Daydream. And it's been an incredibly amazing couple of months, even just sort of 9 weeks. In the next slide, it demonstrates and tells the story of what Daydream is about. And that, for me, is one of the exciting parts of it. We're people that dream and people that do. We're people that have rolled up our sleeves and said, well, what's the worst that can happen here? Let's just make something. So we've created, as you see there, free, ready online resources. And a little bit like at the end of Ofra, where there's a swag bag for everyone, the work that we're going to show here, you can download for free at the minute on the Daydream Believers, daydreambelievers.co.uk. You can download these resources. And if you're a teacher sitting here thinking, I don't know what I'm going to do tomorrow, there's something for you. Or if you're looking for a new and a different qualification, you can have a look at that. The next slide just tells a very, very quick overview of what we've been doing since we went online in the last, I think, just over 2 years. So that is, we have one playlist. We've had 36,000 unique visitors. We're in 125 countries and 10.5K individual lessons. And I don't do that in a ta-da moment. I do that speaking from my heart, because it's not just me. I'm, have mouth will talk, but it's a group of people. It's a group of believers, school, colleges, businesses, who've all come together to create something different. In the next slide, it shows really what we are doing in Daydream in terms of being an interface. And that's just quite simply a space where businesses, communities, education, universities, colleges can come together, share our insights, and get it directly into the classroom. In the next slide, what we talk about is the creative thinking qualification. So in this time last year, two amazing people from Edinburgh College, Kerry Heathcote and Sheila, wrote part of a qualification for creative thinking. And if you have a look at the next slide, it's a level 5 and 6. And they're amazing. Get on with it. Let's just do this. Let's just write that. Enabled us to have this credit rated by Edinburgh and Napier and create something that is obviously the equivalent of a Nat 5 and a higher in creative thinking. Our mission is to look at creative thinking right across the departments, and to look at how we can use this qualification to solve the wicked challenges that we're facing within our world. So in the next slide here, you'll see one of the sort of statements that we have. How do we get help our young people to become fearless agents of their own destinies, to realize that creative thinking is their operating system, and that is the operating system that will save our climate and help our planet. So in the next slide, you'll just see very quickly the process of this. So there's 5 learning outcomes in this qualification. We've mapped it against the design process. It's got challenge-based learning at its heart. And the idea is that we can take challenges like reimagine city car parks, reimagine derelict land, help communities. We can take all of those and map them against these outcomes. And then just very quickly, what I'm going to do is, this is the playlist. So one of the things we're looking at is how we can become a little bit like Spotify and develop up playlists that enable teachers to plug and play these challenges across their curriculum. So in a get on with it kind of way, very often climate change and the call to do something sits as an optional extra outside of our curriculum. And what we are really excited about is the potential that these challenges now have a space within the Scottish curriculum. These challenges can now have merit and credit rating attached to them. And we can now go to our partners like MacArthur Foundation and work on further challenges. So in the next slide, you'll see what happens when you download it. These are the 4 challenges that you can get. And Philipa is going to share with you the circular brand, the fast fashion challenge that she's been working on with her students. And then just in the next slide there, you'll see what that shapes up like. We've got one playlist. There are 13 schools. There are 240 hours worth of learning, and it has 24 SCQF points. So just very quickly, you'll see the schools. You might recognize some of your friends. If you're having a bit of, feeling left out, when you look at some of your friends are doing this qualification, just get in touch. We are open and ready for students and pupils from next year to take part. As I said, you can download the Creative Bravery playlist and have a look at what that academic year would be like and talk about it as an IDL model right across. So science, geography, history, working together. Okay, I'm just going to pause and we're going to move on to Ruth. Poor Ruth is not with us, but we'll keep going. Lorna, just keep sharing and we'll keep rattling on. And I'm just going to tell you Ruth's story. So Ruth left Kuzlin this morning, heading to Glasgow with her trusty electric van, which many of you maybe in education have identified with. Actually getting the license and the clearance to drive that van, I think, was more difficult than even achieving any qualification, degree, teaching qualification. Many of you, if you've ever had to drive a minibus, might share that. So Ruth is going to talk to you via me about the Lego challenge. So in the next slide, you'll see. So these are the swag bag. You can go in now and download this challenge. And Lorna, just fly through this part of it. You'll see this is exactly what you get when you download it. In the next slide, that's the challenge. So how do we make a space for communities? This is the Brave Times, which you can also find out a little bit more about. And then here, you'll see the second action pack that you can go in, and that's the Get On With It. So what I'm showing you here is what happens when you download this resource. This is exactly what this looks like for you as a teacher. And it enables these interesting and sometimes difficult conversations to come directly into the classroom. So just as you see here, Lorna, you can go to the next one. We'll just fly through this. This is what the challenge is. It breaks it down. So again, written by Whitespace, how do you break down a challenge? What is it we want you to do? And then finally on this slide, the PechaKucha, we've given you a way here of sharing your story. And if you don't know about PechaKucha, you know, find out about them. This is brilliant. And Stow Primary will talk to you a little bit about these guys. Amazing guys in Tokyo, 2 architects, basically set up because they felt architects talk too long. And it's a format of storytelling that is really succinct. 10 slides, 20 seconds for each slide, and you can use this to upload your Get On With It story. So for example, you as a teacher can take this into your classroom. You can get your pupils involved with this tomorrow, and we will share your story at COP26. So it'll be uploaded to the site. The content can be used by primary and secondary schools. You may want to just adjust it. You can filter on our sites, the ages, and that would be helpful. So there's a Lego storytelling that might be more suitable. So on slide, where are we? 34 there, beautiful Lorna. At this point, you could be forgiven. And trust me, I would myself. Yeah, Helena, wow, aren't you fab? Look at you, wow. And I would go back to the story of romance, disillusionment, and joy. And I would also say to you that I always try to speak to you honestly and from our hearts. So up until 8 weeks ago, we were working on a journey with after the pandemic. We'd managed to convince Lego that they should be on a site in Glasgow that was a piece of derelict land, reimagined, held up by a bit of scaffolding and some bits of wood. And everybody was really happy. And 8 weeks ago on a Sunday afternoon, we got a phone call to say that this wasn't going to be feasible, that these amazing people from after the pandemic, a creatively brave group of people who wanted to bring the local people of Scotland, of Glasgow, and bring their voice to COP, had some of their funding pulled. And we had to phone Lego and tell them that this was not going ahead. Now, if you've ever heard people swear in Danish, it's not pleasant, and I wouldn't want you to have it happen to anybody. But we got together and we got some Post-it notes and we went into our problem solving. And as you see there on slide 35, we spent 24 hours for us in the pit of our stomach, looking at every different possibilities, from marquees in the back of my garden to a touring bus. Everything, and things felt pretty bleak, and I felt incredibly uncomfortable. And then in slide 36, the Creatively Brave action came about, and the amazing guys at After the Pandemic and the guys at Strathclyde University and Strathclyde Union offered us their new multi-million-pound learning and teaching hub. And this is where the part of Strath Union is, and we are now going to be there. in the space of 48 hours, these guys turned it around and in 3 days pitched it back to the senior Lego model team, Lego team, and we were back on board. So in slide 36, just as you see there, this is where we are going to be now. And this is actually where Ruth is at the minute, if she's not stuck at Hart Hill with the electric van. So slide 37 there shows the inside of the building with the Get On With It branding. This is an open space with Lego. You'll see slide 38 there. We are having Fortnite experiences. This is the media room. 39 there, I'm trying without my glasses. This is where the Build a Change. So there's going to be workshops, and this is where the Amazing Style Primary are going to bring their kids. And then we've got also in the top there, a venue for keynote speakers. And I'll put some of the links in to the site that you can go and you can book into. Now, Lorna, I know we might be asking the gods of internet for too much here, but do you think it's worth trying the video, or do we?
We're going to give it a go.
Well, we've not got sound, have we? No. Well, I'll send the link to this. It's only a 2-minute video, and it's really the students of Napier University giving us the Get On With It story and showing us a little bit about, you know, where we're going to be. So I think I've talked for way too long. And Lorna, if you're happy, let's just go to the next slide and introduce the amazing Philipa. Who I'm delighted. Philipa always says yes, and I know that a lot of the time that's not an easy yes, but she's going to tell you and share her experience of getting on with it and bringing some of these challenges through the new qualification and working with her pupils. So Philipa, I've got my fingers and all my toes crossed that this all works for you. So over to you.
Hi everyone. Yeah, so I'm here to share our first project in the new Creative Thinking Awards, and I'm kind of here today with two hats on. As David said, I'm a Daydream Believer and I'm seconded there 1 day a week, helping to shape the new award, and I'm also a classroom teacher at Drummond Community High School 4 days a week in the Art and Design department, and I'm one of the schools that are piloting this new Creative Thinking Award. So if we want to move on, that'd be great. On to the next slide. So I hope what I can do in the next few minutes is just share a bit of the joy that being part of this has meant to me this year, and the kind of fun that the pupils, I think, have experienced through this first project in the new award. So this is how we sold it to parents and carers and to pupils just a few months ago. And if we go on to the next slide, I'm going to talk about the first project that we've done with the amazing Ellen MacArthur Foundation called Circular Brand. So we're incredibly proud of this first project. It was, as I say, created with Ellen MacArthur and Harry, who is the schools and programmes manager there. And it was a true collaboration, so a really exciting process to be part of. And I'm going to share just a little bit with you about what the challenge entails. So all of our projects at Daydream are challenge-based, and they're all based on real life challenges. So in this particular project, we're asking students to create their own fashion brand, to consider the brand values of their brand, create a mission statement, design a collection of t-shirts, but all of this has to be done to promote the circular economy to young people. So that is the kind of carrot that we waved in front of them, because the excitement of designing a t-shirt, as you can imagine, was huge. So that's what led them into the learning about the circular and the linear economy. So if we move on, that'd be great. So if we move on, we can see the next slide is one of the early sort of warm-up exercises, where we're asking the young people to map the future. What do they think the future will look like? You know, perhaps transport is powered by footfall on a pavement. Perhaps the high street is full of rental clothing shops instead of retail. and perhaps food sources are grown on the roofs of those buildings. So an early warm-up to get them thinking about how we can move from a linear to a circular economy. And on the next slide, one of the things that we loved about all the Ellen MacArthur resources, what they had a very sort of contemporary feel to them. And the students particularly liked this one about denim redesign. So this is really about companies thinking about ways that they can design out waste and pollution in order to align with the principles of the circular economy. And you can start to see in some sketches here that what we're interested in is the process that young people are working through. It's not just about the end product, it's about how they got there. And I'm going to show you some great sketchbook pages in a little bit. So on the next slide, you'll see we're starting to think about mission statements. You know, how does a company share its values with their customers? So we looked at a fantastic film by Patagonia about just all the amazing things that they do. And then we also looked at other companies like Instagram. And, you know, it's really exciting because students have lots to say about things like this. This is their world. And, you know, they were pretty cynical about Instagram's mission statement. So that generates lots of interesting discussion. So in the next slide, you'll see that students are then asked to think about designing their own brand. So what values will that brand hold? And on the next slide, thinking about a brand name. So we can see that we've got lots of great examples and case studies in the resources. And here's an example of, you know, creating a name for a brand through a mashup of two words, net and flex, or perhaps you use an acronym like IKEA. So moving forward, we're now on the next page and we're looking at a student sketchbook. And because we're dealing with the circular economy, we got them to think about circles. How many different ways can you draw a circle? You know, is it positive, negative, overlapping, linear? As many different ways as you can think of representing a circle. And then this led us on to creating a logo. So you can start to see some of the sketchbook pages by students. So I think it's the sketchbooks in particular that have filled me with just such enthusiasm for what they're doing. And I think this is maybe where we're offering something a little bit different in the Creative Thinking Awards, because a huge amount of the emphasis goes on what we call the failing and fixing. And all of these ideas and iterations show the importance of taking risks. And obviously you have to create the right kind of emotional climate in your classroom to do that. So I'm pretty honest with students that, you know, this is a new qualification, that we're trying stuff out. I really want to hear their feedback, and showing that, you know, it's okay for you to fail as well, and that you can just do your best to fix things. So if you look at the next slide, you'll see a few more sketchbook pages. So I hope you can see some of the kind of real energy and enthusiasm that the students have. And there's a great clip by D&AD, and Nick Eagleton speaks to them about the creative process, almost never landing a big, beautiful idea on your lap. You have to take the small but interesting ideas and grow them, stretch them and push them until they become great. And there's no shortcut for that. So that's what the sketchbooks are, I think, really show that students are willing to do in this new award. And then as we move forward, you can see on the next slide, this is T-Mill. This is a really exciting young company that have a free platform where students can design circular brand products. So they do all the thinking for you in terms of, you know, it uses organic cotton, renewable energy. The t-shirts are printed in real time. So there's no wastage and nothing goes into landfill. So the students absolutely loved working on T-Mill, and, you know, they helped each other problem solve how to use it, as well as obviously having direction from me and from the video clips that T-Mill produce. So on the next slide, you can see a student's final product. So this is her brand. It's actually the initials in her first and second name, but that works well for her because it's okay. And she's talking about keeping clothing out of landfill and out of the trash. And the next one, a lovely piece of branding with this lovely illustrative visual, which could be the earth, it could be a light bulb, it could be a hot air balloon, and a nice acronym for her slogan for her brand. So on the last slide, you'll see there some quotes. When I asked the students how they thought the project was going and what they had really got from working on it, I'll give you a moment just to have a look at a couple of those quotes. So I hope you can see some of the enthusiasm there, and some of them spoke about going home and talking about it with their families and you know, educating their families about the circular economy. So they're definitely excited by this project and eager to share their learning with other people. So, and I think the success of this and other projects at Daydream is that this is about real problems and young people finding real solutions to them. So that's what I think's motivated them so much. And that's why, along with our 13 other pilot schools, we'll be sharing some of the work that we've created at COP26. So that's over. That's me. I think I'm finished. So I'll pass you back to Helena.
Thanks, Philipa. Brilliant. And we also spoke to St Andrews, who were running this as an S6 class, St Andrews in Glasgow. And when we were doing the Creative Bravery Festival, and the teacher came on and she said, listen, I'm really sorry I don't have a lot of content because the kids have taken it home and are working on it on the weekend. And it was one of those moments as a teacher you couldn't pay for that. So yeah, it's interesting, you know, to think about that qualification sitting at an S6 level and potentially looking at, you know, students who maybe haven't come through the creative route as such in schools. So Lorna, don't rest back up there. It's not time for a glass of wine yet, because we're now going to have the amazing Stow Primary. And I say amazing because in all of our journeys, you meet people who just say yes. Anyway, I won't talk for long, and we'll pass ourselves over to Christine and Debbie. On you go.
Hi everyone, my name's Debbie Matthewson. I'm the principal teacher at Stow Primary School in the Scottish Borders, and thank you Helena for inviting us along today to share our story. So as you can see from the slide, I'm going to put my glasses on so I can read the tiny print on the slide. We're a small school, in a small rural school in the heart of the Scottish Borders, and you know, we'd like to think that we've got the drive and determination to make a big change. I'm going to give you a little bit of background on how our story started. So if you can give us the next slide, please. So how did our story begin? Our school was inspired almost 3 years ago by a young boy in New Zealand, a friend of mine's son, who was 8 years old, and he had made a big difference in approaching a ferry company in Auckland to reduce them, to stop using plastic straws on their ferries. He'd done a lot of work in school around what plastic was doing to the ocean, and he tackled that by speaking to the ferry companies. I shared this at an assembly with our pupils, and they too were inspired, and if not a little bit competitive as well, to not be outdone by a pupil, an 8-year-old 12,000 miles away. So on the back of Monty's story, we applied for, we entered a competition which was run by the MacArthur Foundation to become one of Scotland's 100 disruptors. And it was on the basis that if we were successful, we would run an event that disrupted people's views around single-use plastic. And that's exactly what we did in September of 2018. We held an event in our community that disrupted the views around single-use plastic. So the pupils took to stage and they used song, they used a rap, they talked, they did presentations. They spoke to a packed town hall in our village, all around changing mindsets. And really, we felt at that point that that was a celebration of the piece of work that had been done in the primary school around sustainability. But what really happened at that point was that we'd ignited a passion within our pupils, our parents and our community, and a desire with them all to continue to use their learning and people voice to make a positive difference to the planet. And really that was the start of our disruptor story. And for the past 3 years, we have continued to do that through a variety of different what we'd like to think creative approaches to teaching and learning, using real life context to contextualize learning to support our pupils and their voice in making the changes to their world. Initiatives, things like you can see on one of the little slides there, the pupils, we designed our own disruptor face masks and they sell them as an enterprise business. They made their own eco Christmas crackers with no plastic in them, and they were sold to the community. They have a bamboo toothbrush enterprise business, and our recent one in the past few months is our campaign is Sack the Sashi. All of this is led by the pupils and they convey their messages. We have a high profile on social media where they do poems and encourage people. I suppose you could say they're very brave. They're used to being filmed and putting their messages out far and wide, and what we need to do to make the change that's necessary in our world. Next slide, please. So the countdown to COP, this is the perfect stage for us, I suppose, for use of a better word. We're already well on our journey to changing people's mindsets and on our learning for sustainability journey. But since coming back in August, we've had a focus, with COP in mind and what we all need to do. So things that are happening in the school for COP, the little slide in the corner, we've got a partner school in India, in Mumbai, through connecting classrooms, and our pupils are doing we work in collaboration with them. One thing they're doing is the same as us, is the Sustainable Development Goals, which is life below water. So we share and learn with the common. We're going to do a river clean. They're doing a beach clean in Mumbai, and the slide there is the pupils in Mumbai watching our Sack the Sashi poem. So showing that the problems that we're facing in Scotland are very similar to the problems they're seeing around plastic or other issues within our local communities. Our ELK children are heavily involved, so the 3 and 4 year olds are also working on COP. You can see on one of the slides they've been looking at what happens when the ice melts. So they've got their polar bears in that tray, and they had ice caps, they had the ice cubes or big pieces of ice, and they were looking at what happens with when the ice melts and rising sea levels. So they've been very much involved as part of the school and their learning. We are using the Education Scotland resources on the countdown to COP and the 5 themes there. So each class has looked at using them and focusing on them over the past few weeks. We are also, our brand of disruption and being the disruptors is a great pride to the pupils, and no more so than the older pupils, but very conscious as a school that we needed to keep bringing that back to life for our younger pupils. So in some of the slides you see that the primary 7s are teaching the nursery children what it is to be a disruptor and disrupt people's views and share their learning. What else have we got on that slide? The other slide is the campaign across the school, which is Sack the Sashi, and that all pupils are involved in that. There is a poem that our primary 2-3s took the lead on that's out on our social media pages at the moment, but as one of our pupils shared with Helena a few weeks ago, our campaigns aren't publicity stunts. They come with learning and applying their skills. So behind the scenes, the pupils have all from each class written to different companies who are using sashes, in our opinion, too readily. So big companies are being targeted and are about to get letters from our pupils saying and asking them to come up with alternatives. So all of these things have been done in preparation for COP and building momentum around COP. So from a 3-year-old to a 12-year-old, they're well versed on what COP's about, why we need it, why it's important, and that this is the one chance we've got to really make a difference. Next slide, please. And I think the next one hands to Christine.
Class 6-7 teacher. I think it's fair to say that we're always on the lookout for competitions and activities that engage our pupils, particularly around climate action, and things that give us an opportunity to call others to action. Our pupils very much took their disruptor role very seriously. We decided as a school that we would all take part in the Forest of Promises campaign, and our P4 to 7s also took part in the Royal Bank of Scotland's Money Sense Climate Change Top Trumps competition, which provided great learning opportunities there. Lots of debate on how the different categories should be scored, which was just brilliant conversation amongst the boys and girls. We have planned, as Debbie mentioned, around the pupils' choices of Sustainable Development Goals for the year, and for COP26 focusing on the weekly themes and the challenges, and we were pretty clear on where we were going for the term. A few weeks ago, it would be fair to say things took a turn when we were invited by Helena to take part in a Teams meeting as part of the Creative Bravery Festival, and the primary 6-7 pupils took part in a meeting with PechaKucha, Whitespace, various members of the Daydream Believers team, and some university students. You're very brave, Helena told us. We've got your back, she said, and indeed she did. And our primary 6-7 pupils presented Stow's journey so far and were very well received. Debbie's given you the beginning of that story, but it's in that little bit at the beginning, so much has happened. So the guys, following on from that, the guys from PechaKucha, Brian in particular, was really impressed with what the children had shown in that meeting, and they offered to work with them to develop their skills and tell their story under the Get On With It banner. We were hugely privileged, you can see Brian there at the bottom of the screen, to have him join us on Tuesday morning and to support the children in learning how to put together a PechaKucha presentation, which they had already had a go at, but he took them through the whole planning stage of it, explained some of the technicalities around it, and he was also there to support with any technical difficulties, which was amazing for us because obviously there's a huge time difference between Stow and Tokyo, and he came back and gave us lots of helping hands there. And the learning for the children has been immense, not only in terms of using the technology, but most importantly in learning how to use their voices effectively. And the possibilities for using PK presentations across the curriculum are endless. It's been a brilliant opportunity for our pupils and reinforced the value and benefits of creating partnerships and forging relationships across the globe. It's also given an insight into the world of work and an opportunity for our pupils to gain an understanding of what skills they might need and what future employment opportunities might look like for them. We've almost finished our Get On With It presentations, where the children talk about an aspect of climate change that they personally feel passionate about, and in the presentations they call others to actions. If you're interested, you'll be able to watch these presentations. They're only 3 minutes 20 seconds, and they're available on the PK website. You need to look out for the videos with titles that start with disruptors. We were hoping to attend COP26, but only had confirmation of that within the last couple of weeks. So we're all very excited about attending next Tuesday. We're looking forward to the workshops, especially Build the Change, and of course presenting at the event space I'm not going to say too much more about that, other than to say, Helena, we've got a new song for you, which we hope you'll love as much as Land of Dreams. So I'm just going to pass back to Debbie to finish off.
Thanks, Christine. So yeah, where does our journey end, or is this just the start, I suppose, is the question. And Helena constantly telling us we're brave. I think we've been brave, we've been creative, we've been flexible, we've been pushed to the limits this week, or in the past maybe 6 weeks or 8 weeks since we met you, Helena. And I know from my point of view, the hashtag Get On With It rung bells in my head, because I tend to do the just do it to the staff. And this week, we're certain, this past 2 weeks since we've had approval from our authority to come to COP, we've had to be brave. We've had lots of sleepless nights, but we're ready to go and be there on Tuesday. We've got a rap to perform. We've got a new song for you. We've got a poem, and our pupils are ready to tell the world leaders to just get on with it and do what's needed in our world. So we're very much looking forward to it. And thank you for the opportunities you've given us.
Thank you. That's amazing. Thank you, Debbie, Christine, and Philippa. So, David, that is our Get On With It story. And I think just before, you know, we'd love to hear from everybody what maybe has sparked from them. I can put some of the links in for some that link to some of the conversations, but this is a conversation, and we would love to know, you know, from this, what's your takeaway? You know, what can you do? What takes you out perhaps from the pit of your stomach of despair? Well, there's nothing I can do. We're all doomed. You know, nobody's listening. It's the politicians' fault. To be like the people that you've heard from today, our teachers, and just do something. You know, how can you support your well-being? How can you take yourself and give yourself energy that you know that you can make a difference? And anyway, David, I'm going to hand back to you.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Helena, and thank you so much to Philippa and to Debbie and Christine. I mean, there was just so much in that, as well as the rallying call that you put out, Helena, as to what people can do. And I'm hoping that questions and comments will come in the chat on that. I thought there was so much more in there. The work from Stow is just absolutely brilliant, because one of the things it shows is how you can take a small school in rural Scotland and connect it to the world. And they mentioned links with Tokyo, they mentioned links with India, they mentioned links right across the board. They've got young people involved with a major international conference, and that's fantastic, I think, in itself. What that will do for the broader education of young people in that school will be quite remarkable. I also was really struck by the idea that, and the best way I can put it, is they have a school of mainstream disruptors, that these are young people who are not working against the system, but working within the system. But they're putting in that challenge, they're building that confidence, something that I think we desperately need to do with young people in Scotland. They've linked it to oracy, they've linked it to articulacy, they've linked it to the mainstream curriculum, and I thought that was all exceptionally well done. And in a sense, it had to be, because it followed on from Philippa's contribution. And what I thought she talked about had that same level of integration of work. I was really taken with the creativity of it. I was really taken by the high quality of the work and the way that it also linked things like media education, understanding, much greater awareness of what happens with advertising and branding and all of that. The way that it increased the vocabulary of young people, not just in the sense of words, but in the sense of ideas, and such enthusiasm from Philippa as a presenter. So I thought all of that worked really well. And what we're keen to do, I think, is to give people a picture of what can be done around COP, but also, and you used the phrase earlier, Helena, of the sense of carrying a baton and passing it on. So again, opening up in the chat, if anyone wants to come in, we'd be absolutely delighted to hear from you.
I see there's a question just about parents in the local community in Stow. Debbie or Christina, I don't know if you want to, it's how did the parents in the local community respond? A very good question. If your child's coming home and saying, there was somebody from Tokyo in our class today, what's been the response? I think that's a great question.
I was just about to type, Helena, but this response has been phenomenal. The 100% backing from our parents in our community, and very much to the point that the Stow community almost mirror a lot of our initiatives. So, for example, our book swaps, or we had a book swap, pre-loved clothing, etc., that the children started. And now Stow's got their own swap take it page on Facebook, which is used much wider than just the parents. Christine and I are involved with several community groups, myself with Stow Community Trust, Green Stow, as are the other staff members. So full support from the community. We have a community garden. We got funding for that Christine's got the lead on. For food growing, that we'll have community members once restrictions are lifted on us involved. The parents are, I suppose, they're proud. They're very proud of the school, as is the community, and very appreciative. That was evidenced by several emails that they received about Tokyo coming to Stow last week or this week. So yeah, full backing from the parents and the community. Christine, I don't know if you want to add to that, or
just really, I think that occasionally, and on more than one occasion for sure, the community have come to us and said, are you interested in this? Can we join in this with you? And they're very much keen to be part of what we are doing. When we had our enterprise started with the bamboo toothbrushes, we had one lady came along and said, what about shampoo bars? So we took that idea from her, and I think it was the same lady, Debbie, that introduced some biodiversity into our school.
Yeah.
She has emperor moths, so she gave us some of those to watch them fledge. I don't think fledge is the right word, but
So the other thing, just with the community, on the back of once we've been to COP on Tuesday, we've also, the Stow community are doing an event on the 13th and 14th, and as a legacy of COP, called Sustainable Stow, and our pupils will share what they're doing at COP on Tuesday with the community in the town hall. So it's almost like we've gone back a circle of how our disruptors started. So they're coming back from Glasgow, and they'll perform their rap and their song, and they will share with the community their experience as well as further disrupting mindsets.
And I think this is one of the really powerful things that's come through both from your contribution and from Philipa's. And it's the idea of how we integrate ideas in schools. I was actually struck when you were both presenting by that set of links that you clearly had with the community. You mentioned that earlier, and I thought that was one of the key elements, the way that you built that trust and developed it. It's been really helpful to hear the other ways that you've done that. But it's the same thing, I think, with Drummond Community School as well, that everything they do, they try and bring together so that it makes sense. And it sits beautifully, I think, with Philipa's involvement with the circular economy, that we don't think linearly. We need to think in circles. We need to make connections. We need to make links. I think you've exemplified that brilliantly. And the other thing, there's a great comment in from Lachlan Rogers about the takeaway of handing over to pupils. And Lachlan's absolutely right in having that as a takeaway, because I think what we're doing at the moment often is chasing our young people. At our last conversation, we had Scarlett Westbrook, a very young climate activist who spoke brilliantly and was a real leader in that conversation. And I think if we don't take the kind of steps that you're taking, that Drummond are taking, that Daydream Believers are supporting, we'll lose the confidence of our young people. because we will be seen as not sharing their concerns and their sense of urgency. So again, thank you for that. I think that's particularly helpful and particularly powerful.
I think, David, one of the things that would, and I know this from what's happening out there at the minute in our schools, it's very easy to be paralysed at the minute. It's very easy to think, I've got enough on without having to solve the climate challenge. And I think, what we have found is that instead of this being de-energizing, it's actually energizing. And that ability to sort of say, well, if not you, then who? Who is going to do this? And to recognize that in sort of saying, well, okay, there's a resource there that tomorrow you could take into your classroom and spark a conversation. I imagine so many of you out there could easily have filled an hour slot about your get on with it experience and the work you're doing. So why not do that? Why not just, go in, put a 10-slide PechaKucha together. There's a half hour every day through COP that we're going to be showcasing some of these. And I think back to the day when we found out that venue had been pulled. And I don't know if you ever have this where you think in your lives, oh God, there must be an easier way to earn a living. There must be, and you sort of envy people who things don't, seem to be a bit smoother. And when Ruth went back to her guys in the university who've been hugely supportive in Napier, and one of her senior managers said, Ruth, never run away from a good crisis. And I thought, what a really inspiring thing to say, to turn and face something when you feel in the pit of your stomach that this is too difficult, I don't know how it's going to work, I'm unsure, I don't really want to take anything on you, this might make me look stupid. To have the curiosity and the humility and not become paralyzed by our fear, because exactly what the guy, I'm trying to remember his name now, in the TED talk, Adam said, we are poised at the minute. We have the capacities as humans to become a better species than we ever imagined. And if not now, then when? This is our chance. Start small, feel brave, and from my perspective, just get on with it.
And it's my great pleasure to welcome Ruth Cochrane, or Noah, as she's now known, who's clearly survived the floods and the aquatic crisis and climate emergency in Glasgow at COP26 in our electric van, which we've heard a lot about, Ruth. Anything you want to just throw in towards the end?
Oh, I'm so glad I didn't hear any of it. No idea what Helena's been telling you, but it's all false. We've just come from the union where we're setting up, and I've been moving Lego bricks about the place, and I'm at the printers now where we're pulling together a lot of the artwork from young people that have been generated from this global classroom that we've created. And do you know what? It's just, and I've actually just been on the phone to one of the primary schools, and it's been that kind of day where everything's come together, and the occasional lump in the throat where you just think, do you know what? We've been talking about this in meetings like this for months and months and months, and it's happening, and it's actually happening. And I'm sure you've heard about the rocky road that we've had to get here, but it's all made it more worthwhile in a lot of ways, because I'm sitting in a room with people that we've been on that journey with, and created these relationships that just show what's possible if you just decide you're just going to have a go and see and be brave enough to fail. And that's kind of what we did. We were always brave enough to fail, and it looked for a minute or two that we might be headed in that direction, but it's really nice to be able to come and say we're still going, and hopefully this time next week we'll be surrounded by Lego bricks and young people, and well, by this point we'll be having a pint hopefully, and I'll have sent the first lot of kids home. So really excited to share the story, and if you're in Glasgow, if you can come to Glasgow, we'd really love to see you.
And I'm really delighted to hear that. I think I'm keeping an eye on the numbers and the conversation as we go, and I think it's a good time to kind of wrap things up a bit. There's some real lessons out of today, and one is about the balance that we need to find between recognizing the enormity of the challenge that we face, because all of the work that schools are doing will be wasted if the politicians at COP aren't prepared to take seriously the need to take vested interests head on. It's a massive challenge. And what we mustn't do is breed complacency and create the sense that if we make enough bamboo toothbrushes, we'll put out the fires. But at the same time, we need to balance that. And you've done this beautifully, all of the presenters today, with the need to give young people a sense of belief in their own agency. It was a key message, Helena, from your initial part of the presentation about making young people agents of their own destiny. And that's what we're looking for, to give young people that sense of power, that sense of capacity. We've got 4 of them in Scotland, and they're all wrapped up in Curriculum for Excellence. But that capacity to be real agents in your own destiny is a hugely, hugely important one. I think we've struck that balance particularly well. I think the other thing I've loved about today is the way that people have taken forward activism within a context of achievement and attainment. It's at the heart of a lot of what Daydream Believers is about, building the idea of activism, of being change agents, into something that attracts certification at some stage and gains points academically as much as anything else. And that's been carried forward both by Philipa from Drummond and Debbie and Christine from Stow. That idea of it's our job to educate young people. We must do that, but we educate them for everything, and building in the pillars that they link all of this work round. I think that's been beautifully done today. And my final comment from me before I round things off is that one of the quotes that I've been using a lot, and it's typical of me because it's a quote from me, is that the real answer to stress is job satisfaction. And what you were talking about latterly is how we get that job satisfaction by doing work that's worthwhile for us, worthwhile for our children, and worthwhile for the communities that we serve. So thanks very much to the presenters. We'll make sure that people know that this is recorded, that it'll be available, that people will have other chances to listen to it. We hope we'll get an even bigger audience for it in the future. We're working hard on our future creative conversations. Very excitingly, we've agreed one with the legends that are Tim Brighouse, former leader of the London Challenge, and Mick Waters, who's a huge figure in education in England particularly, but across the UK, who'll be doing a creative conversation with us in January about their new book. They've interviewed every surviving Secretary of State for Education that they could possibly get hold of, and I, for one, can't wait to read the book. We'll be doing that in January. We've got a conversation scheduled for February on bilingualism, and we've had some really exciting initial discussions about that, and we're hoping to set up something special for Christmas on inspirational teachers. But actually, if people haven't been inspired by what they've heard today, I don't know how we're going to manage to do better at Christmas. So thanks to everyone who's attended. Thanks to everyone who's presented. It's been another wonderful, wonderful day for me. So a personal thank you too. And stay safe, everyone.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good evening. Thank you. Thanks, David.
Thank you.